In a world of twisted facts, alternative narratives, corrupted corporations, and hacked feeds, how can we decipher the difference between truth and fiction? It's time to take back the truth. Read Robert Kiyosaki's Fake and learn the signs to recognize fake money, fake teachers, and fake assets. Determine what's real in a world where falsehoods are a weapon. Don't let fake advice destroy your financial future. Visit therealkiyosaki.com to read Fake by Robert Kiyosaki. That's therealkiyosaki.com.
If you're listening and you have minors around or you don't like strong language, you may want to skip this show. Just thought we should warn you. If you still are listening, enjoy the show.
This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello. This is Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. You know, everybody dreams about becoming rich. Everybody dreams about, maybe I should become an entrepreneur. I hate my job to become an entrepreneur. But the main reason you can't do it is because you can't handle the truth. You couldn't take the feedback. Because let me tell you something, the moment you leave the E quadrant, the employee world, and you step into the small business world, the world comes at you at full force. And the average schmo is not prepared for it, and they can't handle the truth. So today we have a very, very interesting character. He's a star, 8 years on television, and he talks about don't bullshit yourself. And that's the main reason I would say most people are not as successful as they could be. But the reason if they totally fail is because they can't handle the truth. So our guest today is Jon Taffer, and he's host and executive producer of Bar Rescue on Paramount Network. His new book is Don't Bullshit Yourself, Crush the Excuses That Are Holding You Back. But I know most of you can't handle the truth anyway, so you may as well tune out now. But that's what it takes.
I'm not
Hold on, John. Hold on. Let me have some fun here. So I want Kim, what do you want to say about our guest?
I'm looking forward to it. Crush the excuses. I mean, anytime I say it myself, anytime I blame something outside of me, I know that's not the answer. And that's what holds people back are all these excuses. Oh, I don't have time. I'm afraid. What if I lose money? All these excuses. And John's going to call it straight. So, John.
Wait. We have another guest with us today. It's Rich Dad Advisor, Garrett Sutton.
Sorry,
she forgets about her best friend.
I forget about the attorneys. Sorry.
That's
John,
not easy.
John, because you're on our program, we made sure our attorney was here, okay? Because...
Your reputation precedes you, John.
So Garrett, say hello. This is Garrett Sutton. He's the author of Run Your Own Corporation, and he's here to support John in the fact that one of the reasons people fail is they break the law, right?
That's right. People have this scofflaw approach when they get into business, and they think that they can cut corners. They think everybody else is cutting corners, so they can too, and you can't. If you follow the rules, you're going to succeed, and it's that simple.
I completely agree with that.
So, John, give us an introduction. John, don't bullshit me now. Give me an introduction. How'd you get into the no bullshit business?
I've always been sort of no bullshit. When I was young, I became a manager at a young age. And I learned at a young age that the definition of management to me is achieving of objectives through the manipulation of others. Now, it's a cold statement.
So, there you go.
Wait, John,
manipulation is not a dirty word.
No.
John, what were you managing? A bar with pretty women in it or something?
I was managing nightclubs when I was young.
I thought so.
Pretty famous.
I knew it. Where was this?
The kind of
was
venues
this?
I ran when I was young did, well over $500,000 a week. So, these are significant, high-volume, large venues. These were multi-million-dollar businesses to build and operate, and they're a big responsibility.
But
So I learned at a young age that when somebody tried to BS me, that, I had to bust them. I had to call them out, or I was going to fail. I've always been a little bit in your face.
What city was this female bar? Entertainment bar in?
Well, the one I'm referring to was in Glen Mills, Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia. It was called Pulsations Nightclub, and it was we did about $650,000 a week. Had a spaceship that flew into the dance floor and dropped a $400,000 robot in the dance floor.
Oh, wow.
And it was a very, very
Wild.
famous, huge, large venue.
Wow.
And at a very young age, I was thrown into management. And honestly, I wasn't ready for it. I bullshitted my way into it. And I didn't bullshit myself. I bullshitted them.
I think we've all done that.
When you're young, when you're young, you have to talk bigger than you are.
Yep. Yes,
That's
you do.
how you seek opportunities. Once you reach a point in life where you don't have to bullshit anymore, then you don't have to bullshit anymore. But I talked my way when I was young. I was a good talker, and I talked my way into positions that exceeded my own experience or capacity. So I put myself in a pressure cooker.
Yep.
And that pressure that I put myself under made it pretty intense for the people around me. And I had a reputation younger as a manager. I was called things like Gus for Gestapo, and I was a very aggressive manager.
Well, that's a really good point, that sometimes you got to bullshit others and say, oh, can you do this? Oh, yeah, I can do that, with no idea that you can do it. I mean, that's what I did as well. Can you do this? Oh, sure, I can do that job. Yeah, I'll do that, having no idea what I was going to do.
But the difference is you're committed to doing it.
Yeah.
You can't say that and take somebody's money and not try.
Yeah, you got to go.
You
got to do it.
If you take somebody's money, then you got to freaking really kill yourself to try to do it. And I did. And that's what made me successful. But, the whole bullshit premise happened more in bar rescue. And bar rescue, I never thought I'd be on TV. And somebody said to me, you should be on television.
Well, would you explain what bar rescue is? Because we're an international audience.
Sure. Bar Rescue is a television show. It's on Paramount Network in North America, and it's on about 3,400 television channels around the world in 4 languages. So many of your listeners have seen it or heard of it. And it's a show where I'm thrown into disastrous bars that are failing and restaurants that are failing. And many are owned by families. Some are owned by partners, brothers, sisters, husband, wives, investors, investment groups that somebody else is running for. And I'm given literally 4 days to turn the business around. And in those 4 days, I have to assess the operations, diagnose what I'm going to do to fix it, reconcept it, rebrand it, remodel it, retrain the staff, infuse new recipes and everything, and reopen it in 4 days. You want to talk about a pressure cooker.
Yeah,
I hate to admit this. I've only seen one of your programs, but it was intense. Like you said, it was a family-run restaurant. Everybody's going broke. But you have some hardhead who's in the way of the process.
And is that usually the problem? It's the people that are in their own way.
Well, I've always said this, and you guys will like this. Every failing business has a failing owner. Period.
Hey, come on, don't call me names.
So let's put it where it is. Businesses don't fail on their own. They fail because of their leadership, because of the choices and decisions that are made. And that's the whole point of "Don't bullshit yourself" is a statement like that, because that statement is complete bullshit. Businesses don't fail; people do.
Right. So
that's the first premise of understanding. And let me go on for a moment. So when I created Don't Bullshit Yourself, it was after about 120 bar rescues. And somebody came up to me, and I said, why are you failing? And they blamed, this is a true story. I was in Michigan. And I asked the family why they were failing, and they truly blamed the euro in Greece for their failure of a bar in Michigan.
Oh, I haven't used that one yet. I'll try that next time.
That's my next one.
That was over the top.
Oh, my gosh.
I realized, okay, in 120 some odd episodes of Bar Rescue, nobody has ever come up to me and said I'm failing because of me. They always have an excuse. It's the president, it's Congress, it's the recession, it's the weather, it's construction on the street, it's the mayor, it's the man on the moon. Everybody has an excuse. Nobody ever comes up to me and says I'm failing because of me.
So
I realized that, okay,
John,
excuses are...
How do you handle that?
Yeah, how do you get them to break it?
Well, you have to call them out. So you have to go at people very personally to break down that type of a barrier. And I'll do it one of 4 different ways. First, I'll try to appeal to pride, right? I'll show them a picture of their child. I'll tell them how they've lost their house, how their family is counting on them. Don't you want to do better this? And I'm trying to have their brain open a crack so they realize that they're the reason of failure. Sometimes pride doesn't work. Then I'll go into fear mode. What is your wife going to say to you when you fail? What's going to happen when you lose your house? How are your kids going to feel when you say no to them every day for all the things that they need? How is it going to feel to be a failure? And I challenge one of those two things, and I have to go at them hard, and it's the ugliest part of the show. But at some point, I must make them own it, because if you don't own failure, you'll never own success. So I have to teach them that. So in this process, I came up with, the premise that excuses are the common denominator of failure. Let me prove it to you. What is an excuse? An excuse is nothing but a reconciliation of a screw-up. Either you did something you shouldn't have, you did something you shouldn't have, or you screwed up, or you would never have used an excuse in the first place. So all an excuse is a way for you to make yourself feel better about your own failures, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I'd have to agree with you there.
So an excuse, people never use an excuse unless they've screwed up.
Exactly right. And then it makes them feel good, and they go to bed nice and cuddled up.
Not my fault. It wasn't my fault.
Yep. So that was the first premise. So excuses are the common denominator. They freaking paralyze us, right? They stop us from action, cause us to take inaction, to freeze, to not move, to not take chances, to not pursue relationships, not end relationships. They freeze what I call all progress in life. So what I did in the book is I first of all put forth that premise, which is a pretty powerful premise that a lot of us have never thought about that way. And then I broke down the biggest excuses in the book. For example, fear is one of the biggest ones. Oh, I'm scared. It's always interesting what fear is. We're always scared, unless you're standing on the edge of a cliff. You're always scared about something thousands, if not millions of people have already done. Fear is bull. It's not a real thing unless you're standing on a cliff.
Well, so
managing risk, certainly, but fear is bull.
So, John, I've watched like The Prophet and stuff like that, and these guys, a lot of them don't make the change. They just hang on to the bullshit. Have you noticed that?
I have noticed that. I think I'm a little different in that regard. I'm just intolerant of it. I can't help myself. I can't hold back, even when it doesn't directly affect me.
Yeah.
Then the other ones, of course, that really affect us. I love this one is scarcity. Well, I don't have the money. I don't. Tell that to Stephen Jobs when he was in his garage.
And you know,
to all these other entrepreneurs that start with nothing.
And to that point and to the fear, we hear this all the time with entrepreneurs and first-time investors or early investors. I'm afraid I'm going to lose money. I'm afraid I'm going to make a mistake. I don't have the money. I don't know what. It's like we hear it all the time. I
always ask them, are you scared there's going to be too much salt in your French fries this afternoon, too? When do you get your life under control?
Hey, so John, we're going to take a break, but I want to have Garrett, my attorney, step in, because a lot of times people don't get it until after the law comes after them.
Right.
Because a lot of times...
Very true.
A lot of times people don't follow or they don't comply what I call sound business practices. But if they're not complying with sound business practices, a lot of them also break into law to compensate. So when we come back, we'll have Garrett say a little bit about people who are bullshitting themselves, that when you cross the line and you break the law, that's when I really come after you.
And that's when they say, not my fault.
So when we come back, we'll be talking to Jon Taffer. He's an entrepreneurial consultant. He is a producer and executive producer of Bar Rescue and Paramount Network, and he's the author of the latest book, Don't Bullshit Yourself. So whether you're an entrepreneur or not, this is the perfect program for all you bullshitters out there. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki.
Don't be like Charlie. Charlie is that do-it-yourselfer who does himself in. Do-it-yourself is good for tile and grout. It is not good for asset protection. Charlie thought he'd save a few dollars forming his LLC online. With no guidance, he did it wrong. When he sold the property, he lost thousands and thousands of dollars. He did himself in by trying to do it himself. Don't burn yourself. Use Corporate Direct to set up and maintain your LLCs and corporations. Corporate Direct is owned and operated by attorney and rich dad advisor Garrett Sutton. Garrett wrote the bestsellers Loopholes of Real Estate and Start Your Own Corporation. He is Robert Kiyosaki's attorney for asset protection. He and his team will do it right. Visit them at corporatedirect.com or call 800-600-1760. Mention Rich Dad and receive $100 off your formation fee. That's corporatedirect.com. corporatedirect.com.
Log on to richdadradio.com while you listen. Now back to Robert Kiyosaki.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki. The good news and bad news about money. You can listen to us at any time, anywhere on Android or iTunes. And all of our programs are archived, so you can listen to it again, because we're an education company. We don't sell anything. But we want you to listen to this program again, because the second time you listen to it, the third time you listen to it, you'll pick up more. And our guest today is Jon Taffer. He's the executive producer of Bar Rescue.
And the host. And the star.
Well, he's the author of the book, Don't Bullshit Yourself. And we meet so many people. I mean, I'm sick and tired. I don't know how you put up with all these years, John. But I got sick and tired of listening to people try and bullshit me. And I'm going, hey, you're the problem. And so anyway, it's a very important show. You can listen to it again at richdadradio.com. Get your friends, family, and especially your lying business partners to listen to this. And you might learn something. So John's website is jontaffer.com. So let me just tell you quickly my experience. Everybody wants, at least I wanted to run a bar. I was a Marine pilot in Hawaii. And I decided I'm going to open a bar. So as my rich dad always said, he says, you better go get some experience. So I went to the Ilikai Hotel on Waikiki Beach, and I got a job as the manager of the Canoe House, the bar. And I knew I was not smart enough to be in the bar business. And the reason is I couldn't figure out how the bartenders were stealing from me. They were on me. Your PC is too high. Your PC is too high. PC stands for pour count. I said, how in the world are these guys stealing all that liquor from me? I watch them every night. How are they stealing all that money? And my manager...
let me give you one...
Wait, let me finish this. So the manager's guy, Steve Maroney, said to me, he says, Robert, if the bartenders are smarter than you, look for a new profession. I went, that's the best advice I heard. So anyway, I want to have Garrett talk. Garrett Sutton, he's our Rich Dad advisor, run your own corporation. But there's a lot of crime that goes on in many organizations, and the crime actually gets to them, right, Garrett?
You got to follow the rules, as we said at the start. And I was a waiter and bartender at Lake Tahoe, and then in the Georgetown district of Washington, D.C. And what I saw was owners taking money under the table, right? It's a cash business. They take money under the table. And two things. First of all, you can't really sell the business if you can't report how much revenue you have, if you're taking everything under the table. Second of all, the employees see that, and they start taking money under the table. And then all of a sudden, you've got this cancer in the business where everybody isn't following the rules. So it starts at the top. What do you see with that, John?
Well, first of all, it's about as stupid can be, because you do burn yourself in the end, because the value of the business is less if you don't report the revenue, of course, right? You're selling a business that is far less valued. But here's what's interesting, and I've been an expert witness in these legal cases. If, in fact, you run a cost of alcohol that is over about 25%, the IRS will know that you're skimming cash from the top. There are certain cost factors that are standard in the industry. If you're running a high cost because you're spending the money on inventory, as is normal, but you're skimming from the top, the IRS can and will find out, and they will come after you. And they use a financial formula based on about a 25% cost, and they'll back into those revenues, and you'll get fined. And believe me, tax fraud as a liquor license holder is a serious matter.
Right. The other thing I see, John, is people will get started as a sole proprietor in a bar, and there's huge liability associated with running a bar. I mean, some states still have the Dram Shop Acts where you're responsible for people leaving the bar who are hammered, right? So you need to have an LLC or a corporation to run the business through.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only with liquor liability, but anytime you're running a business where there's public gathering like that, you can have slip and falls. People are intoxicated. You can have fights. There's all sorts of liabilities that can happen in that environment.
You're
You
taking
must
all the
be
fun out of owning a bar.
I'm a lawyer, Robert. That's my job.
And we were talking earlier.
fights.
I think all of us at some point wanted to own a bar, and I cocktailed my way through. I was a cocktail waitress through college, and I thought, I'm going to open up a restaurant and bar. And so the owners of this restaurant said, great, if you really want to do that, then you're going to spend all summer doing every single job in this restaurant. And by the end of the summer, I said, no way in hell. I'm not doing this. I mean, I was washing dishes. I was doing French fries. I was doing it all. But, yeah, it was a great education.
So, John, so let's say these people are listening. I saw this latest study that 70% of Americans now hate their jobs, and they all want to start their own businesses. And so it's up from like 64%. So what advice would you have to somebody sitting out there, I hate my job, I like to drink, I think I'll open a bar. What would you say?
That's like a drug addict saying, I'm going to open a pharmacy. I mean,
But
outrageous. But, I suggest that you don't get in the bar business for social reasons. You don't get in the bar business because you like to drink. It's a tough business. And you just talked about it, getting your pouring cost in line, your labor cost in line, managing your legal exposure, running a responsible business where people are constantly safe, having the money required for payroll taxes and for other responsibilities. It's tough. And you got to love the business, not love the product to be good at it.
And you bring up a really good point. I was watching an interview that you did, and it was all about customer reactions. And what you were saying, like, for example, in the restaurant business, people think food is the product. And you're saying it's not the food that's the product, it's the reaction from the customer. And does that apply in all businesses? I mean, that's a really strong point.
I believe so. You might call it education, what you're doing now. But if you don't entertain and create reactions in people from the content you're creating now, nobody listens. You're not in the content of the education business. You're in the business of creating reactions. The content is not the product.
Yes.
The content is the vehicle.
Amen.
The product is the reaction.
Amen,
That's a
John.
really great point.
Amen. I'm really a stand-up comedian.
As are you, John. As are you. But, a lot of retail's going that way now, right? They're all looking for this experience and to give a customer an experience versus selling them clothing.
Well, because an experience connects you to the brand. There's no question about it. And the deeper the brand connection, the greater loyalty and the greater perceived value, which means you can charge a higher price. Yep. So, everything is so experiential today.
Yeah.
So, John, we're running out of time, but what couple of points would you say to the new guy wanting to start their own business, especially a bar or restaurant business? What would you say to them?
First of all, there's no greater journey in life than starting your own business. The risk itself is invigorating.
Yes. Writing
a check, knowing that you're taking a risk on yourself, believing in yourself. All of these things are some of the greatest moments you'll have in your life. So there's no greater journey in my view. Here's what you need to do. You need to have extra money. Understand that whatever you're going to do is going to take a little longer than you plan. It's probably going to cost a little more than you plan. And getting the profitability might take a little longer than you plan. So you need time to make mistakes and learn what you're doing. Money buys time. And I believe many new small business ventures, and I know you guys will agree with me, don't fail per se. They run out of time before they could have become profitable.
Yeah.
Amen.
It's like the football game. So if you had a few extra dollars, you could have made it another month or two and figured it out. You could have made it into the next season. So have the money that provides you with the room to make the mistakes that you're going to inherently make. And with those extra dollars, far more businesses will find that success.
Well, it's taken me 25 years. I still haven't made it, John. What's wrong with me?
And so, John, you go out and you rescue these bars and restaurants. Can any bar and rescue be saved? Or maybe any bar or restaurant be saved?
I believe it can. Especially if it was successful at any point in time. But yes, I mean, there are locations that people can't get to. You can't make a left, you can't make a right, there's no parking. I mean, there are physical barriers to success, no question. But those physical barriers aside, you bet. And after about 189 or so bar rescues is an independent website that tracks our success that we have nothing to do with. And my people say on TV they have enough money for 2 or 3 weeks. Sometimes we have to write checks to keep the lights on while we're there. Wow. That's how broke these people are. And we're running about a 68% success ratio.
68%,
so
fantastic.
Remember,
wow,
they're
that's
on
fantastic.
COD. They can't get deliveries. They're behind on taxes. So the fact that they've stayed open is an accomplishment in that situation.
Wow.
Well, congratulations for all your success and being willing to share your success with the world.
This is fun.
It is fun. And you've seen more failures than most people, huh?
I think I have. But this is a lot of fun. I'd love to come back and do it again sometime.
Yeah. Let me ask this question. What message, why should somebody buy your book, Don't Bullshit Yourself, Crush the Excuses That Are Holding You Back?
We all need that friend who's going to be straight with us. We all need that person in our life who's going to give it to us straight and make us think about ourselves in honest terms. I'm that guy.
There you go. There you go. Well, that is the number one problem. People generally do not tell themselves the truth. I mean, especially when it comes to money. Oh, my gosh.
I agree.
Especially when it comes to money.
So, John, thank you very much. When we come back, we're going to next most popular part of our program was Ask Robert. But, John, once again, thank you for your contribution to humanity.
And we'd love to have you back on the program. Yeah. Very fun. Very fun. We only hit the tip of the iceberg.
Terrific. We'll do it again sometime.
Okay, John. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Thank you.
And we come back, we're going to Ask Robert.
You're listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki.
What is your number one expense in life? Your number one expense. It's taxes. And I've asked the question is, how come there's no financial education in school, but why isn't there education on taxes either? They tell you to save money, which is stupid. They tell you to invest in the stock market, which is stupid. But won't they teach you about taxes? So here we have Rich Dad advisor Tom Wheelwright. We're talking about his revision for his book, Tax-Free Wealth. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks, Robert.
So what's the tax-free wealth about? What's different this time? It's a revised edition.
Well, so what we did was this is the first major tax reform we've had in 30 years, 2017.
Was 86 was the last one?
86 was the last one, back when I was in Washington, D.C.
So many guys got wiped out because of that tax change.
They did. It wiped out an entire industry, savings and loans. This new tax law is just as big, but in a very different way. It affects different industries. The tax law is always a series of incentives. And the question is always which incentives and which ones apply to me. And so the key to revising tax-free wealth was what changed so much in this new tax law that we can absolutely take advantage of. Seriously, the amazing incentives. For example, the bonus depreciation, for example, for real estate is unbelievable. You buy a $1 million apartment, get a $300,000 deduction or more the very first year.
So if you want to make more money and pay less taxes like Donald Trump and myself, get Tom's book, Tax-Free Wealth.
Don't be like Charlie. Charlie is that do-it-yourselfer who does himself in. Do-it-yourself is good for tile and grout. It is not good for asset protection. Charlie thought he'd save a few dollars forming his LLC online. With no guidance, he did it wrong. When he sold the property, he lost thousands and thousands of dollars. He did himself in by trying to do it himself. Don't burn yourself. Use Corporate Direct to set up and maintain your LLCs and corporations. Corporate Direct is owned and operated by attorney and Rich Dad advisor Garrett Sutton. Garrett wrote the bestsellers Loopholes of Real Estate and Start Your Own Corporation. He is Robert Kiyosaki's attorney for asset protection. He and his team will do it right. Visit them at corporatedirect.com or call 800-600-1760. Mention Rich Dad and receive $100 off your formation fee. That's corporatedirect.com. corporatedirect.com.
It pays to listen. Now back to Robert Kiyosaki and the Rich Dad Radio Show.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki and the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And I want to thank Jon Taffer, entrepreneur consultant and host and executive producer of Bar Rescue on Paramount Network. And he's the author of Don't Bullshit Yourself. And this thing about you can't handle the truth, that's the main reason people fail, is because they don't want somebody in your face. So anyway, you can listen to the Rich Dad Radio Show anytime, anywhere on iTunes or Android. And you can listen to this program again at richdadradio.com because we archive all of our programs. Why do we archive it? Because we're an education company. You listen to this program one more time, you'll get twice as much out of it. But most importantly, if you have friends, family, and business associates who are skimming stuff, have them listen to it. Because you have somebody who's a crook, and there's a lot of them, especially in small business. As soon as I walk into a small business and say, we'll give you a discount for cash, they're probably palming the money somewhere. They're not paying their tax bills. That's criminal. That's a federal offense. But people do it all the time. And you don't have to do it if you have the right, should I say, professional advice. And so, ladies and gentlemen, don't have to break the law to save money. Any comments, Kim?
Well, I really enjoyed Jon Taffer. He was great. He actually has an earlier book that he came out with in 2013, which I thought is interesting. It's called Raise the Bar, and it's about how to maximize customer reactions. And he talked about, the product typically isn't food, isn't education, the product isn't the dress, it's how the customer reacts. And I thought that was just a really unique way of looking at things. So it's called Raise the Bar.
And he's a really, really outstanding marketing guy. He's worked with the NFL, Ritz-Carlton Hotels, Hyatt Hotels, Marriott, Holiday Inn Hotels, Sheraton Hotels, Peninsula Hotels, TGI Fridays, Buffalo Wild Wings, Famous Dave's Barbecue, Wolfgang Puck Express, Anheuser-Busch. So he is a marketing genius, this guy. So if you want to many people forget about the customer reaction. And I would say that one of the reasons Rich Dad is successful is the reaction from our customers like you, the people who listen to us, because we're not always technically the best. We're not telling you this is A, B, C, D. We just have fun, learn. So coming to Ask Robert, we also have Garrett Sutton. He is a Rich Dad advisor on legal matters. And the reason for that is many entrepreneurs break the law. And they do it because they want to cut corners, save a few bucks. They always say this, I think I can get away with it.
And they're thinking like such a small business owner. Yeah. That keeps them small.
And we're very much into being above the law, right, Garrett?
Absolutely. You can make so much money by following the law, right? If you're going to succeed in business, follow the law. The law it's a path for you to be successful.
Yeah.
So I see that a lot, Kim, as well. And I just have to tell people, look, the laws are here to help you, not to hurt you.
Yeah. And, when Jon talks about excuses, I know of one person specifically who they've done some things and the law came after them. And all he could say every single time is, it's not my fault. I did everything I was supposed to do. I did everything right. It's not my fault. Well, something went wrong. And
Ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Yep.
You can't say, I didn't know that law.
Yep.
You are held to know the law.
Yep.
Right. So once again, you can send your commissions to ask questions. You can send your questions to Ask Robert.
I like commissions. You can send your commissions here, too.
But don't declare it, okay? Declare it. So submit your questions to AskRobert@richdadradio.com. So Melissa, what are some of the questions?
Our first question today, Robert, comes from Victor in Alabama. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He says, if I'm just starting to learn and create apps, does it make financial or tax sense to form an LLC, like a family LLC?
And that's a very important question because the reason we have Garrett here is Kim and I are not attorneys. And that's the biggest mistake people make is they ask people who want to sell you something or have no experience or family members who are idiots, but you should ask an attorney who has no personal stake in this whole thing. Because the reason we have Garrett here today was for these questions. There's a lot of people in the financial services business handing out bad advice, right, Garrett?
Absolutely. We see it all the time on the internet, on seminars out there where you're listening to really bad advice. And so you need to be able to gain this information yourself. It may entail some reading. It may entail kissing some frogs, but you're going to have to get
just hire an attorney. It's a lot easier.
Hire the right attorney for sure.
And you actually had an experience where you tried to give the correct advice.
That's true.
What happened?
Well, Kim, I was at a seminar, and this promoter, who was not an attorney, was selling a legal product, claiming that he represented this box of forms represented an entity that didn't exist, right? And so I went up there and said...
What was the entity?
It was called the Family Limited Partnership.
There's no such thing?
There's a limited partnership, but he made it sound like there was this special secret entity called the Family Limited Partnership. And it's just a limited partnership that holds family assets. But he was selling this thing, and I got up there, the next speaker up, and said, there's no such thing as a family limited partnership, and they kicked me out of the room. But that's my job. I did, but that's my job is to tell people what exists and what doesn't exist. So in this case, there's really, again, no such thing as a family LLC. There's LLCs that can hold family assets. But I would suggest that an LLC, perhaps taxed as an S-Corp, would be a good way for him to go.
So what book could they buy of yours that would give them kind of a
I think Start Your Own Corporation would be the place to start with this.
That's with Garrett Sutton. That's why we have Garrett, because people come up to me all the time, ask me legal questions, and I say, I'm not an attorney. Now, what would happen if I was dispensing legal advice, Garrett?
Well, you could get in trouble, Robert.
Yeah.
And, there are people out there that do dispense legal advice who aren't lawyers. And it's hard for the state bar in the various states to catch up with these people. So your listeners, the people listening today, have to be very careful not to take advice from people who aren't attorneys, who aren't accountants, who aren't professionals in the field they're talking about.
We always say, be very careful of who you take advice from.
Absolutely.
And that's why we have the Rich Dad Advisors, because these are really Garrett is really our advisor. Garrett saved us millions of dollars because, as you know, once you get successful, they start suing you, right?
We are a litigious society, and when you start gaining assets, there's a big target on your back. Yep. Either you're protected at that point or you're not.
And what's keeping us alive today is we followed the rules, right?
Right.
And we set up the entities before we got big.
Correct.
Before, when we were small, we set it up correctly with you.
Right.
Because our plan was to get big, but even if not big, we can still have the same problems.
Well, and it's like the question with the app. I mean, an app can go big quickly, and you want to have that set up right at the start. As well, an app involves intellectual property. If you hold that intellectual property in your individual name and get in a car wreck, someone could get that patent right away. As well, you can't deduct your business expenses unless you have an entity.
So what's the name of your book again? It's a Rich Dad Advisor
Start
book?
Your Own Corporation.
With Garrett Sutton. So the most important thing, ladies and gentlemen, ask a real attorney, not somebody who plays an attorney on TV. Okay? So what's the next question, Melissa?
Our next question comes from Elijah in Washington, D.C. Favorite book, Cash Flow Quadrant. What are the biggest differences in terms of taxation between an S-Corp and an LLC?
Well, again, I have no idea because I'm not an attorney or an accountant. So what's your response to that, Garrett?
Well, the LLC offers all sorts of flexibility with regard to taxation. You can be a partnership, you can be a C Corp, an S Corp. So the LLC is whatever you want it to be tax-wise. The S Corp is a flow-through tax vehicle that allows you to pay yourself a reasonable salary. You'll pay payroll taxes on that, which if you own the business is 15.3%. And then the money can flow through without payroll taxes. It can flow through as a distribution. But that should be an accountant and an attorney. That's an accountant question.
And an attorney question.
Correct.
I think the biggest mistake I've seen people make all the time, they ask an accountant when they should have been talking to an attorney, and they talk to an attorney when they should have been talking to an accountant. So that's why, Kim and I have Tom Wheelwright and Garrett Sutton, and I make no decisions on my own. Right,
and
Garrett?
You guys talk together all the time.
We talk a lot, and I kid Tom. I say that CPA stands for cannot protect assets.
So I want you to hear what I'm saying. A lot of people want to save a few bucks and they don't want to hire an accountant or attorney. But that's what you have a license for, right? I mean, you don't want to risk your license.
No, and my obligation is to the client. I have a fiduciary duty to the client. I'm not going to sell them a bunch of entities they don't need. We're going to set it up with just the right amount of entities that will protect them. Instead of some of these promoters say you need 7 layers of entities. That's nonsense. That's just them billing you for more entities.
And in the financial services industry, especially these mutual fund guys, I go to these, I call them rubber chicken dinners, it's where they serve you a rubber chicken for dinner. And they tell you about some new way that their mutual funds are going to save you and make you money. And they're no different than the last guy at the rubber chicken dinner I went to. And it is shocking how uneducated, if you're uneducated, how much bad information is out there. They're just trying to sell you something. They don't really care if you use it. So that's why we have Rich Dad Advisors and people like Garrett around us. Next question, Melissa.
Our next question comes from Titus in Appleton, Wisconsin. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Says, what is Rich Dad's advice on being a W-2 employee versus a 1099 independent contractor?
Okay, those are U.S. terms. So what does that? What does that mean?
Well, W-2 is a salaried employee. They receive a W-2 form at the end of the year. A 1099 is an independent contractor, someone who's not an employee of the business but provides services to the business, either through their own company or individually. And that's a form you get at the end of the year, a 1099. So W-2 would be employee, 1099 would be independent contractor. And this is a huge issue in the U.S. The IRS, they need payroll taxes. They need money for Social Security. So they are starting to characterize people as employees so they can collect more payroll taxes.
But the big difference, if you're a W-2, like an employee, the government gets paid first.
Right.
So the taxes come out of your payroll before you get paid. Governments get paid first. With a 1099, governments get paid last, right?
Right, and the IRS doesn't like the whole 1099 phenomena. And it's really interesting in California where all these wage claims are coming up. People who paid people as 1099 employees, those employees are going back and suing the businesses in California saying, I should have been treated as an employee.
Oh my gosh.
And there are all these lawsuits now. I talked to a client the other day. They had 35 employees. They treated them as independent contractors. The state of California, the labor commissioner came in and said, okay, well, you owe us and them $1 million. These guys don't have $1 million. It's going to shut them down, right? They're going to have to go out of business. But the worst part is the state of California now says if you made these payments to them through your business, you are personally liable. Even though you had no intent, you weren't an officer or director, you're personally liable for these payments now. So not only are people struggling in their business, but now they are personally responsible. They have to make these payments out of their own financial resources.
It goes back to the regulations are just killing small business, just killing it.
Well, it goes more than that. With CalPERS, which is the largest state employee pension plan, they're bankrupt.
Well, they're $1 trillion underwater.
Yeah,
there's no way they can recover.
Oh, my gosh.
And so this guy, Martin Armstrong, is a pretty radical guy. He just says, move out of California now.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are moving out of California.
We see it in Reno, Nevada. There are a lot of Californians moving out.
Yep.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that's why you want the best legal and the best tax advice possible. Most important, follow the law. Comply, comply, comply. Don't try and save a few bucks here and there because it eventually comes back to haunt you. So once again, I want to thank Jon Taffer, entrepreneur, consultant, host, and executive producer of Bar Rescue. He's author of Don't Bullshit Yourself, Crush the Excuses That Are Holding You Back. I want to thank Garrett Sutton, author of Run Your Own Corporation, and Rich Dad Advisor. And in final words, Kim?
I just thought this was fascinating, and if you find yourself making an excuse, you might want to look in the mirror.
Right. And so once again, submit your questions to Ask Robert at Rich Dad Radio, and thank you very much for listening to this program. Thank you.